Basically, this is a time where we have a little bit we want to talk about, but not much. Our main purpose here is to hear your concerns and let you know what we know about stuff going on down in Cheyenne. And I think let's go ahead and start with prayer and the pledge. And I might ask Pastor Nick to lead us in prayer if you would.
Let's put our hearts before the Lord. Father, once again we come to you thanking you. You have all things under your control. God, tonight as we gather here, we ask that you would help us to think about the questions that need to be asked, and so that the legislators will know what we want them to be looking at when they go down to Cheyenne here shortly. Father, we thank you tonight that you would continue to bless Chip and Allen and Cheri as they work on our behalf in Cheyenne to do what they can to turn our state around, Lord God, and get us back into solvency and everything we need to be. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Let's say the pledge. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'd also like to thank Cheri for helping us get this organized with being the Republican Party chair. And with that, I think I will turn the mic over to our senator and let her start off.
Makes sense.
Well, hello and happy New Year. It's good to see all of you guys. So, and I'm glad that you don't have the snow that Les does. They had a ground blizzard on my way here. It was wild, so it was nice to see bright, sunshiny skies when I got up here. Well, as you know, and there are a few new faces, so I'm Cheri Steinmetz. I'm the Senate representative for Senate District 3, which is Goshen, Weston, and Niobrara counties. And it's the lower half of Weston, but I'm glad to adopt all of you. So if you need something, I'm glad to be here for you. It's been good. We were in Upton this morning, and well, actually at noon, I guess. And we're here with you tonight just to hear what's on your mind and on your heart. And I hope that we leave here hopeful, because some things that we haven't known in the past are being revealed to us. And that's the only way that we can fix things, is if we know what the problems are. So if we talk about the problems, that's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, because that's the first step in trying to solve some of the problems we're facing as a state and as a nation. And we're here because the power is inherent in you, the people, and we want to hear from you. So I'll pass the mic now.
So I mean, we've got a number of bills coming before us. I think last time I looked, it's somewhere between 500 and 600 bills that are coming out. And so, needless to say, being it's a 20-day budget session, most of those bills are never gonna see the light of day. And so there's a limited amount of stuff we can actually look at. One interesting thing is some of the bills that we tried to get through last session and the other side killed are now coming back. I mean, one example of that is the school choice bill. It's Senate File 143. And last year we tried to get a school choice bill through, and it got.
That was the one we tried last year.
This is the one we actually did try last year. It got through the Senate and got held in the speaker's drawer. Parental rights and education was another one that we tried to do last year, couldn't get it through. And then real tax reform, which was House Joint 1 last year, those bills are all coming back this year. And unfortunately, from our viewpoint as more conservative, the reason they're bringing them back is because this is an election year, and the other side did a poll to see what the people were saying. And so now they realize that they've got to do something about these bills that we were trying to get through. However, we feel that they're actually Trojan horses. They're doing a bill with the same title and kind of the same intent, but they're not at all the same bills. I mean, the school choice bill that's coming back this year is got a whole addition to it, which is early childhood education. I don't know how you want to preschool. And it's actually a totally different bill. It's two subjects. I mean, we've got the school choice, and then we've got the preschool deal that's added onto it, which will basically add a lot of government funding and intervention in our whole system that we don't need. And all these other bills have some of the same things going. So those are just. And our fear is what they're going to do is they're going to take these bills that we had tried to run last year, bring them back, not the same, and with hidden agendas in them. And then if we vote against them because we see what's happening, then they're going to publicize the stuff against us, and their goal is to try to make us look bad one way or the other and still get their agenda through. And that's enough of that. So what we really want to do is hear from you. So I guess I think Cheri's got a mic, and so if any of you have questions or something you want to say, you ask the question, and then one of us will field it.
Yeah, there was a person in the district that, in my area that I represent, and he is concerned about the hospital trouble that we're having here, the funding. And his question was to you guys, and wanted to know your opinions on it. Why won't we expand Medicare or Medicaid? Why not? That was, we'd like to know your opinions on it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take that because I actually, based on the position I'm currently in right now, that tried to come through the House last year. Actually, when we did expand some of the Medicaid or else continue to fund the postpartum portion of Medicaid, and that was to continue to offer funding to mothers after 12 months, or through 12 months after having their child, if they qualify for Medicaid. But in my opinion, I'll let each one of these other folks talk about it, but we've done a lot of study on Medicaid expansion. Medicaid expansion has been brought on several different years coming into Wyoming with the intent that it's going to be a moneymaker, because right now they're offering it to the states at a 90% fed pay, 10% state pay. Well, the effort there is to try to get it in the door. Now, bear in mind, the Medicaid that we're talking about here is because currently Medicaid covers children, the disabled, and the elderly. Those are already covered. Medicaid expansion in Wyoming right now, the way this is set up is to be able to provide health care for able-bodied adults. And that's the reality of what Medicaid expansion currently is. Wyoming has Medicaid. And the folks that we looked at and were able to fund it are currently covered under Medicaid. Those are the folks that are the most in need. The issue that we're running into, that I personally run into, is the fact that we're going to expand the program in here with no guarantee that the federal government is going to keep up their end of the bargain. And the issue that we face then is if not, why goes ahead and bites on Medicaid expansion, fully on expansion, and the government comes back in 2 or 3 years and says that, we're only going to be able to fund 60% this year. How many of you guys and how many of those legislators are going to be willing to say, well, then I guess we're just going to have to end it because we can't afford that? And in my discussions last year with Don Richards, I asked Don, he's the chief financial officer basically, or understands the knowledge there through the LSO staff. And I said, Don, because I had the bill in my drawer and was being held. And I said, what is this going to mean to the state of Wyoming? He said, well, Chip, he said, initially it's going to be a moneymaker for us because they're going to pay us more than what we're going to expand. I said, but what happens after that happens? And this continues on. He said, I could not tell you. He said, I don't know. He said, because nobody knows how much the government is going to continue to support it. And so I've had some discussion on the floor with some of the legislators, one legislator in particular, that said Montana expanded Medicaid and no problem. Well, the issue that we find with Medicaid expansion is that when they give you the idea about how many are going to apply, exorbitant numbers beyond that amount actually apply. Because what happens in those situations many times is employers will say, I will lower your wage so you qualify many times, or I will refuse to provide you health care because you can get it through the Medicaid expansion to the state Medicaid. And so that puts people off onto those roles, but otherwise be under their own employment or finding their own insurance through their job or whatever. And so what I had was an opportunity in my traveling this last year to speak to the Senate President of Montana. I sat down and visited with him when we were in one of our meetings. And I asked him point blank, I said, I've been told by legislators in Wyoming that Medicaid expansion in Montana was no problem. That it just went through flawlessly and that it's not been a major issue. And he said, we didn't implement it, but he said it has not been not a problem. He said that it has expanded exponentially beyond what we ever anticipated. And he said, remember, Medicaid is in separate blocks. That's the way he explained it to me. He said, it's not just one thing. He said, what we're finding is now that the government is coming back and saying, well, this particular group, this block in the wall, you're going to have to put a little bit more in on that. Now, we'll leave you on the 90-10 here, but over here you're going to have to do something for this particular group. And he said, we're seeing our money expand exponentially. He said it's pulling money away from education and other things. So that's the issue right now, is that nobody can tell me that we can afford it going forward, that Wyoming will have the amount of money that is required to be able to sustain it, and that if we implemented it and then had to go back and tell everybody in the state that now we can no longer offer, so you're just going to be out of insurance for able-bodied adults, who is going to have the courage or the strength or the character to do that? They're going to want us to do something and increase taxes or something to be able to cover it. Because generally, and I haven't been at this long, but anytime you offer a program and people get started on that program, if you come back and say we're going to cut that program, murder. And what legislators want to come back and say we're going to have to cut it. And they actually said that on the floor. If the government puts it under 90%, we'll just quit. And nobody believed that. When folks get off and get onto these things, they don't just quit. So, short answer, we honestly, I don't believe in this state right now, know, based on our extractive industry and the peaks and valleys of what we see going on, if we're going to have a consistent revenue stream to be able to stand it. And if we can't, then property taxes and other things are going to have to take up the slack when we are forced to fund education because of our Constitution and several other things. We have too many things competing for too small of a piece of pie if the government removes their share. And there's no guarantee that they won't. And until they do that, I personally, I don't want to do that to myself or my family or my grandkids.
One other thing I will add to that more locally, if we expand Medicare, or Medicaid, Medicaid doesn't pay the full price of bills. And so if we expand Medicaid, we're actually signing the death to our local hospital, because if we get everybody on Medicaid, it's not gonna pay the expenses of the hospital, because Medicaid doesn't pay the expenses of those bills. I mean, you've got people in this room that are on the hospital board that you can talk to that have more information on that than I do, but from what I heard, that's not what we want.
And just a little so my husband works in insurance, and so there are very generous subsidies through the Affordable Care Act and through the exchanges. I think some of the issue we have is people aren't educated in what's available now to them. The other thing I would say, a few years ago, there was a study done, and a lot of the unfunded care, or the people who skip out on paying their bills for the hospitals, were the young males, like 24 to 40, something like that. And they just weren't paying their hospital bills, was one of the things that were indicated as being a real problem for our rural hospitals especially. And we raised the upper payment limits trying to address some of those problems at that time. I have a meeting with my hospital boards the 13th, and so I'll hear more about what the current state of affairs is, but we're always listening, we're always looking for solutions. In my mind, Medicaid expansion is not one of them at this time.
You got what you had?
So the expansion, what's the definition? You said it would apply to other able-bodied people? What's the description in the proposal of able-bodied people? What's the limits? Is it income? What is it?
My understanding of it is that it's based on income levels, and whether they're jobless or not. And so it's basically it's allowing medical coverage for people that could otherwise be working or are able-bodied. And that's the key part of this to me. Nobody in here, or nobody in the legislature is going to not insure, children and the disabled and the elderly. They're already covered by Medicaid. The Medicaid that we're talking about, the expansion, is to be offered to people that are fully able to work. If you're disabled, you're already covered. If you're not disabled and you've got a low income level potentially, then you would qualify. And that was another issue that was brought to me by the gentleman up there, was that it encourages a lot of business owners to lower their pay rates in order to qualify, so that they don't have to provide that coverage in their business.
So it's based on
Income level and the age and availability of insurance for them, or if they want to work or whatever. So that's the key thing that keeps in my mind, is that it's able-bodied adults that are able to be working. Anybody want to expound on that?
Can you turn that off when they are asking questions?
Yeah, the two microphones fight with each other, so when they talk, just turn yours off and I'll turn that.
Are you on?
Nope, I'm off.
I just wanted to add a little something to this Medicaid thing, because the federal government's looking to expand Medicaid because they just allowed over 10 million people to invade our country. All right, and they're here in Wyoming, all over the place, illegals. I'm talking about illegals, okay? And that's what they're looking to do, is give their coverage to the new voters. And that's a good reason not to expand Medicaid, in my opinion. They're overtaxing, in Wyoming alone, they're gonna overtax and burden our public school systems, our hospitals, our doctors, because they have no money, and they come in here and they get on Medicaid. And the other part that they do is SNAP, that's the food program. Personally, I'm tired of going into a store, seeing somebody with $1,000 cell phone, gold bracelets, and all this designer clothing. They can't speak English and they got a SNAP card. So Medicaid, that's where it'll go if you expand it. Thank you.
This afternoon, Michael and I were at the Upton Town Hall. We talked about things for local and sand and carrot trucks. We talked a little bit about Medicare and we talked about 4 things. And the point being is this: I don't care what we do, if we don't get people involved, we have nothing. We just don't. And it needs you, me, and everyone has to get involved. So, I want to know what you were going to do, Chip and Cheri. What are you going to do to help us out? And what are we going to do to help us out? So I'm going to ask the question first of all, what are you going to do to help us out?
I finished, you start.
I think the question was, what are we going to do to help people get involved and get the word out? Okay. So I think we're doing it. We have Facebook pages, we're having town halls. I think we need to have more town halls, maybe more across the state during election season. Maybe a traveling hope tour. Because there is hope for our nation. We are still a nation of laws. We still have our Constitution, and we have a lot to fight for. I don't know about you guys, but my great uncles were in World War II. They were in prison camps. They fought for this country. They bled for this country. And thankfully, none of them died for this country. They all came home, but they had health issues that eventually did take their lives because of World War II and because of fighting against Hitler so that our planet could be free from tyranny like that. And so we each have a role to play and a part to play, and we need to reach out to other people, whether they're in our state or our country or our living room, and there are kids that need to know the foundations of liberty and why we love our country. And they need to have hope. I'm tired of this apocalyptic future that we can somehow ruin the planet because we live on it. And we were put here and designed to live on this planet and to increase and multiply and to prosper and to build societies and homes and to grow food and create gasoline for our gasoline and diesel burning vehicles. And that's the capacity that God put in this world so that we could exploit it and use it, and none of us want to pollute. But there's a big difference between conservation and preservation and not using anything anymore, which is ridiculous. Because we know when we graze our ag lands with cattle, it prospers more. We know when we develop water sources, the wildlife flourish, the hunters are happy. It just makes for a great society. And so we need to be aggressive in our message that what we're doing is helping our planet, it is helping our society, and that we are not an anti-human culture. We are for humans, we are for our children, and we can't allow global elitists to keep propagating lies that say the opposite. So we need to ramp up our messaging as conservatives because we've all been having our head down and working so hard on policy or on our businesses or all of these things. But now is the time for us to stand up and reinsert common sense and actual, the way the world, the economy, all of these things, the way those things function. It's time we engage in the battle. For many years, we sat back and thought things would right themselves. Well, they're not going to unless we stand up. And we stand up for truth. And that truth is the way the natural world works. I mean, you can argue with me all day long that gravity doesn't exist, but when you crawl up on the roof and jump off, I think you're going to find out it doesn't matter what you think about gravity. It still exists. And so those fundamental truths, and the way that our world works is just, we have to keep reaching out and letting people know that. And we're probably going to have to put more money and more skin in the game than we have in the past. But it's worth doing. I think we're building a team across the state that are committed to doing that. And I'm glad to be partnering with all of you in that, because I believe we can turn this state and this nation around.
Yeah, I think Cheri hit the nail pretty much on the head. I mean, that's, and Chip really started out in this area, having these town halls around, just trying to keep you informed of what's going on. And because we need your input to be able to make wise decisions. And not only we need your input, but we need your help. We need your help coming down to testify at committee hearings and at committee hearings across the state when they're going on. So if there's something that's a bill that's being heard that you have an interest in, if nothing else, get on Zoom and Zoom into the meeting, because you can have input on Zoom and don't have to travel all the way to Cheyenne. But people, the public being involved in those hearings is key to how they go. And so we need that. And I think one thing I'm trying to do, I'm hoping to get down here before session, is get a postcard out, let people kind of know some of what's going on. And I'm going to ask for people to send me an email so I can maybe send out weekly reports from the legislature. And unfortunately, gathering emails is not the easiest job, and I'm not a high-tech person, so just doing any of that is not my specialty. But that's one thing that I am going to try to work on, is getting better communication with all of you.
Just briefly, I guess, Connie, from my perspective, what we're doing right here is a part of what we're going to do for you. We want to make sure that you know and understand what's going on in the Wyoming legislature. And that was the biggest issue that I dealt with when I was a committee chairman in Cook County, as the county chairman of GOP. I didn't have a good working relationship with my representatives. It's just the reality. I'd ask them, can we have meetings? Can we find out what's going on in the legislature? Would you be willing to come and share what bills are available? And when I'd ask them, I'll let you know when I'm ready. When I have time, I'll call you. And I think that, and I don't have any qualms with saying that I think the people in front of you and many of the people in the legislature right now, it's a completely different, it's a paradigm shift right now. Understanding that information is power, knowledge is power. And if you can keep the electorate in the dark and make sure that they don't really know what's going on, then things can happen and it's too late. And that's what I've learned is that when stuff happens down there, you aren't going to unring the bell. You have to be proactive. You have to be ahead of it, knowing what's coming. And that is a lot of the pushback. And you're going to hear it. This next election cycle, the pushback is going to come from legislators that are wanting to tell you the truth about what's going on, be transparent, and be willing to be accountable to the people. And I think that's what we can do for you. I think if we are actual representatives and we actually do what you have elected us to do, and that is to serve you and to make sure that you are the ones that we're most concerned about. But the pushback is going to come from other legislators that feel as if you don't play our game, then we won't do anything for you either. So I say this to all of you. We as legislators that are willing to stand up and call it the way it is and say that this is wrong, or that we need to be more responsive or more transparent with the people back home that we represent, need to be fully ready to have a group of people that we don't outnumber yet look at you and say, well, then I guess your bill's in the drawer till you come around. And that's how business has been played before. And if we can do anything for you, Connie, and for the people of this district, we can break that cycle. And we can start to be a transparent force for good and actually represent the people by being in contact with them, having access to them, being available, and listening to your concerns and taking it seriously. And go down there and actually represent you. Because that's the reason I got involved, is because I didn't have representation. I had people that I would try to get a hold of, and they'd look at you and go, just sit down before you hurt yourself. I'll let you know what we do if I need to. You know, but that's why I had legislators actually tell me, that's why they elected us, is because they know that we're going to do the right thing and that they just need to trust us. I hope you trust us, but I hope you trust us based on the fact that we're transparent and we're open and we're honest and we want to hear what you have to say and not just listen, let it go in one ear and out the other, but to actually do something about it. And that's what's going on. You're going to see legislation coming this year that is going to address property taxes. We're going to have to try to wade through this soup and figure out what's political and what is good for the people. We're going to have to try to figure out how to make education choice come to fruition. We're going to have to try to figure out how to make parental rights a key part of this and not just blow it off or let it sweep on down the river and hope that we don't have to deal with it. And that's where I would ask all of you, make sure that you hold us accountable. If you don't like what you're seeing down there and you specifically don't like what we're doing or things that you see about us, then you've got to let us know. You have to let us know. Because we can't do you any kind of a service if we don't know what you folks want. So if we can do anything for you, Connie, we want to be able to be available, be transparent, and actually be servants that actually represent you, not just tell you to wait outside. We want to take your money to build the castle, but once we get it built, we'd like for you to stand outside. That is not how it should be, and that's the way it has been, and that needs to end. So that would be my take. Any other questions?
No questions? Well, I'd like to know what bills are coming. Why, I assume that why we're here is to learn about upcoming bills that are going to be in this session, and I'd like to talk about that.
What we're here for. Okay, sure. Maybe dead. Oh, there it is.
Oh, okay. Well, I've got a list of the Ag Committee bills, so I'm the Ag, State and Public Lands and Water Resources Committee Chairman and the Select Water Committee Chairman. I've got my list of the Ag bills, and then I can remember some of the education bills, but I didn't bring all of them. So we're doing some more work on grace period for state land lease renewals. We've been having a lot of problems with the state land and investments, and you may have even heard of some of the leases that have been vacated for various reasons. We did some work on that last year, but this year we're trying to put in a grace period so that the director can say, we'll give you an extra 30 days in case there's an extenuating circumstance like a heart attack or some catastrophic emergency. There was no leeway there. And we've also done an amendment so that when your lease is postmarked, that'll be the date they consider it received by the office, so we don't have to worry about the post office truck getting stuck on the interstate and then your lease doesn't get renewed and throws you into a huge process with state lands. We have two eminent domain bills. As you probably remember, Allen in his first year, and kudos to Allen, was Representative Slagle.
You guys got a really good guy.
You do. He's been a great asset. He's on the Ag Committee with me on our joint committee. He's done a wonderful job. You guys are very fortunate to have him. He's so strong on the fundamentals and then also so knowledgeable about the issues. With that, he was able to get a bill through last year that would have put a moratorium on wind collector lines and using eminent domain for 9 years. The governor vetoed that bill, so we came back as an interim committee topic and worked on eminent domain. We have two different types of approaches to eminent domain. One of them just says no private company can use eminent domain, period. The other one requires an 85% threshold, that they have to work with 85% of the landowners and 85% of the surface in order to use an eminent domain. So I can see advantages to both of those. We also worked on some excess wildlife population damage amendments. That basically said that because grazing was not contemplated when we have these overpopulated elk herds that are moving out of, you know, some of the more mountainous regions where the wolves are trying to eat them now. So it provides for damage for rangeland. We did some work on meat processing plants, dairy marketing acts, flow through pools, just trying to deregulate, get rid of some of the unnecessary regulations. And then I'm going to let Allen talk about our hallmark bill, the Federal Land Use Plans Legal Action Authorized, because it's a pretty stellar bill. I think it's the best bill we did all year. Would you agree? And I'm going to let him tell you about that, so that, because he's on the committee and I don't want to take all the thunder. And then the State Fair Board powers, we just amended some of the requirements for the Fair Board. As far as education, we did pass a parental rights in education bill. However, it's not as strong as the one we passed through the Senate last year. The school choice bill includes preschool, which is not contemplated right now, and it also includes the fact that you have to meet a certain poverty level. So I would tell you that I don't believe that's an actual school choice bill. I voted against the bill in the committee. We tried several times to amend it. I carried Senate File 143 in the Senate, which was the Wyoming Freedom Scholarship Act. It was a true school choice bill. Last year it passed the Senate, was lodged in the Speaker's drawer in the House. This year the Speaker brought this other idea about school choice, extending it to pre-K. There was also a bill trying to put our DD waiver pre-K from the Community Development Centers, which is currently under Department of Health, into the K-12 system. So that would consolidate a lot of preschool under K-12, which I don't believe is the best way to go. First of all, I think parents need to maintain, I mean, this was a voluntary program, but when you start consolidating that much, it may be mandatory in the future. I don't like to see us move in that direction, and I also believe that the DD preschool needs to stay under Department of Health, because it's very important that they, you know, they still provide glasses and several other things that other preschools don't do. And so there is a funding gap there, and we have to find ways to look at helping that kind of preschool, but the proposed solutions in the Education Committee, to me, don't meet the bill. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, and I would answer any questions you have on any of those bills, but I wanted to let Allen explain our hallmark bill, because it got a lot of press, and it was an awesome bill, and I'm really excited to see where it turns out, and that's our Federal Land Use Plans Legal Action Authorized.
Yeah, and basically what this bill would do, it gives the Wyoming legislature standing to sue the federal government regarding different EPA acts. And so with that bill, there's an appropriation of $15 million, and it's to address issues like what's going on down in Rock Springs with the Rock Springs RMP, and other issues like that in the state where the federal government is coming in and doing issues that are totally opposite to what we want to be doing in the state. And right now, we don't have the standing to actually, as a legislature, to actually take them to bring a lawsuit against them and bring them to court. And unfortunately, I should say unfortunately, in the past, our governor has not wanted to participate in some of these lawsuits that we've been needing to do. An example of that was suing the state of Washington over the interstate transport of coal to their ports to ship it out. And so decided this time we need to just make it so the legislature actually has standing, so we as a legislature, the body of the people, sees a need in the state, that we can actually sue the government to get some resolution. And if you have any other questions on that, we would be sure willing to answer them. And then I'm going to turn the mic over to Chip, because he's got the list of bills up here on his computer that he's looking at, and he can read it better than I can.
Just to give you an idea of some of the different pieces of legislation we all need to be kind of aware of, and I think we hear it everywhere we go. We've got several different property tax legislation pieces right now.
It's better than I thought it was going to be when I was hearing about the split.
Yeah. Well, when I talked to Alicia a couple weeks ago, we were looking at maybe 7 tops, but we're up to 9, potentially 10. We had a new kid move in that might be wrestling as well and joining the team now, you know, so a little bit behind the start. So that's going to put us in a problem when it comes to duels. You know, we're not going to win a lot of duels because we don't have anybody over 160 pounds.
Okay.
And so, you know, we're going to give up 40 points.
Right.
In every duels meet. So obviously it's going to be tough to make that up. We do have some good returners.
Well, you get a couple of fatties off the couch and have them put the Pop-Tarts down, and
right?
You can give people a run for the money.
Yeah.
Probably going to get in trouble for that one too, but
you might.
Come on, Heavies, get out there and go wrestle.
We've got several different property tax legislation pieces right now, bills that are being presented. One of them for your consideration is what we call HB 18, and it's a property tax cap. And this cap, but it's also got a trigger limit. So that's where you kind of get into some of the different nuances of legislation. They're wanting to limit the growth of your property tax to 5%, but the only way that you get that cap in that particular piece of legislation is if you pass the 4th category of taxation. So if that referendum, that joint resolution does not pass, then that cap goes away. So there's kind of that's why it's so interesting. I'm so glad you asked this question, because that's what we have to do to get on the website. Look at those pieces of legislation. When you see stuff like that in there, you need to get a hold of us. Let us know, because I found out about that from somebody else. Because we have so many pieces of legislation that we have to look through, and there's so many different pieces of it. That's why, again, it is so important. And I asked this at Upton, how many of you folks know how to get on the legislative website? Raise your hand. So less than half of you, far less than half of you. I would encourage you to train yourself on how to be able to get onto the legislative website. You go to WyoLeg, WYOLEG.gov. Or you can just search WyoLeg, and it will bring up the Wyoming State Legislative website. On that website in there, you're going to see 2024, I can actually read it to you. It is actually going to say 2024 budget session bills. It's in the 3rd column at the top. You just click on that, and all of those bills open up. They're all in numerical order. If it's got an HB behind it, that stands for a House bill, which means it's going to start in the House. If it's got an SF behind it, that's a Senate file. It will start in the Senate. You click on that highlighted red bill number, and it brings up the bill. And you can read right through the digest of the bill format. You can read the financial information on it, what the financial impacts, plus or minus, are going to be. You can look at the digest of how it was created and what the kind of the digest is basically a Reader's Digest version of what the bill is and what it will do. That is really good, solid information for anybody to be able to kind of have a better understanding of what we're seeing. And as you go through those, they're all highlighted with a title. And so you're going to be able to see on there, for example, titles will be, that helps you and they're supposed to be coherent with the legislation. So, non-resident fishing license fee increases. That's a bill title, and that bill is HB 02. Property tax exemption for long-term homeowners. That's HB 2, HB 3. If you go over and click on it, and it gives you the committee that came out of, and then right underneath it is the property tax refund. Those are all bills that we're going to act on if they make it through out of the speaker's desk and be introduced in the House. And what this is, if you read down through that first bill, if you are, and another thing you're going to learn too, I forgot to tell the other people this, if you see writing in red, when that bill comes up, those are the changes. If it's in blue with a line through it, that is language that is currently in statute but is being stricken and replaced with other language. So it helps you kind of understand what's being promoted and what's being pushed. For example, you go back, and this is a fairly short bill, but fairly far-reaching implications. I think this one is, what is it? You've got to have been a resident for, was it 30 years? And be over 60 years of age. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay, here you go. Now, this is for your consideration, ladies and gentlemen. Part B of this bill says not more than one exemption under this paragraph shall apply to the same property in any year, and no owner shall claim more than one exemption under the paragraph in any year, including property that houses more than one family. So duplexes do not qualify for this. To claim an exemption, submit the claim to the county assessor, but here's all the qualifications now. This is where you got to get into the soup. So I suggest you take hip waders, maybe some kind of a snorkel. And so what it'll do is it'll say the person of the owner of the property, that the person of the person's spouse or 65 years of age or older and has paid residential property taxes in Wyoming for 30 years or more. That's all that this would be qualified for, that particular piece of legislation. And depending on what you guys want, I mean, that's where amendments can come in. We can say if you've been in Wyoming as a resident for 20 years, for 15 years, you know, and that's a good question for all of you. We're talking about property taxes, probably one of the 3 front burner issues in the state right now, is how to control the ever expanding and increasing amount of tax. Currently in Wyoming, our taxes are figured on fair market value. So that's how we get into a situation where people moving into the area and are willing to pay at or above, or many times exorbitantly above, what appraised value is. But if there's 5 or more sales, then they have to do a reevaluation on that LEA. So when you've got a neighbor next to you that's willing to pay $500,000, but your house is valued to that point at $275,000, if there's a few of them in the area that sell, then by statute, they're required to come back in and reassess. And that's the problem that we're trying to deal with, is the way that Wyoming currently figures their taxes, their property values at fair market value, charges you a tax on unrealized income. Because of what someone else was willing to pay for that property, automatically reflects on what your property is worth. Because why would yours be worth any less? Because this property, which is comparable, sold for this much. Therefore, you need to be taxed at a higher rate than what you were. I've got folks up in my country that are spending as much as 40 and 50% more each year on their taxes. Year on year. And what this is talking about here is providing you an exemption if you've been paying for 30 years and you're over 65. Good, bad, you like it, love it, vote for it, what do you want us to do? Amend it? To what?
The time frame is way too long.
Way too long, okay. What would you think would be a better time frame?
15 years.
If you lived here 15 years and paid tax in Wyoming for 15 years and you're how old? Doesn't matter?
65 is fine.
65 is fine? Okay. That's the conversation we'll have to start having, is, you know, if this is acceptable. That's just one of them. Now, it's good to know, because that's what we need. We need to be able to know what you guys' temperature is on this stuff before we go do it. Now, here's another one, property tax refund. How many of you guys qualified for a property tax refund last year? Did any of you apply for it? There's one gentleman. Apply for a property tax refund. We had $8 million in that refund last year. The governor graciously has allowed $20 million in that. Or that's what he's proposing. Now we'll see if that happens. This is all legislation here to be able to do some amending on that. They're going to strike out. Now this is what they're doing in an effort to help. What we're supposed to be doing is they're striking out 125%, and we're going to move it to 175% of the median gross household income will allow you to qualify for that refund. So what it did was it basically made it so that you could make more money and still qualify for that same 20 million, or a percentage of that. Before, if you only made 125%, that was, or below, up to that, then you can qualify. But now you can make 175% and qualify.
Do you know, Chip, what the median income is?
Median income in Wyoming is I can search that. I used to know. That was like 31,000.
I thought it was 34.
34,000. So, and thank you for the question, because I thought that was me. Oh, now you gotta put $5 in the offering plate. That's what you do in Sunday school. What you do is you take that median income, if it's 34,000, and then you multiply that times 175%. So if your household income is at that level or below, then you qualify. Before, it was 125%, 1.25 times that. So this bill basically raises the threshold that allows more people potentially to qualify for that reimbursement of that exemption. But a lot of folks, you know,
Anything else on top of that?
so now other bills, go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things we have to weigh too is what we're doing constitutional, and I think that's debatable on putting an age limit on there. I mean, we can give money directly for the aid of the poor, but there are other provisions in the Constitution that prohibit us from giving money to anyone that is, or an organization that is not under the direct control of the state. And so we also need to weigh all of that. Just because there's a bill doesn't make it constitutional. And so those are the other things we'll have to weigh. We may want something, but whether what we want is constitutional or not, then we have to, I mean, we're threading that needle of school choice as well, which is why the bill we had last year took money from the MRG funding rather than the education fund in order to comply with our Constitution. Now, a few other issues have come up with our Constitution, and we may need to amend the Constitution to actually have education choice in the state, and that is still being debated among even conservatives, whether, what is the path forward to accomplish our goals. And so it's, I hope the one thing that you do go away with is none of this is simple, and then when they're amending it on the floor, and those of you who track bills understand that an amendment can change the entire, it shouldn't make the bill do the opposite of what it is, because then I would say it's not germane, and most of the time people agree on that. However, there have been times, I mean, we saw last session a lot of substitute bills dropped in on people that in a very, a manner that had not been used before, very unconventional manner, that some of these things were done. And so as we go through the session and we see what might occur, also this year, when the presiding officers decide what bills to present, they will also require 2/3 vote because it is a budget year. And so we do have a lot of work to do on the budget. There are a lot of proposals for new spending. I think there's, from initial estimates from what I've seen, there's over $400,000 of new ongoing spending. That's for abiding, 400 million, I'm sorry. Thank you for that correction. $400 million from documents that I've seen, and those are the initial documents. But that is a lot of money. A lot of money of ongoing spending. Part of it is in the school foundation program account, part of it is from the general fund. And with all of us, and I you know, people are hurting. I own retail stores. And this Christmas, people are hurting. They're under the pressures from inflation, from the increased cost of groceries and gas. And it's unconscionable to me to that level of increased spending when we see our neighbors hurting and when we see our people hurting and struggling under the burden of their property taxes. And so we have a lot of big decisions to make this session.
There's one other bill here that we're talking about, and I would encourage you to look this up on the website. It's HB 45. This one just came onto the website. This is a property tax exemption for residential structures. Now, this is a bill that is being promoted from the standpoint of we're going to change the CAMA system through the assessor's office to only if you're a You will. Okay. The only thing that this is gonna do is they're gonna use the CAMA system through your assessor, and I would encourage you to visit with your assessor. From what I'm being told, the assessors like this particular bill. Not sure exactly why, but what it does is it isolates your house. And that's value. And if you don't do any additions to your house, or any kind of upgrades to your house, then that locks it in at that 5%. Or the cost of living adjustment, isn't it? CLI, whatever it is. So it's a 5% cap, but it's only good for your house. So the land around your house is not. So as the value of the land increases, that still continues to move up. Now that, when I pull that bill up here, and this is what you can find when you see that, on that bill that says that will, over last year, if this particular piece of legislation has been implemented last year, it would have relieved $49.5 million of property tax relief to the people that would have had the opportunity to take it off of just their home. And so those are the kind of things that we're looking at, we're going to have to try to figure out. Now, I'll give you some background on this, and this is why it's important that we pay attention, and this is why these meetings are important. In 2021, we attempted to put a cap on, a 3% cap, which is still higher than the cost, normally cost of living adjustment. What is it? No, the CPI.
Yeah.
Consumer Price Index. Is generally below 3%, 2.11, and we see some coming, it could be a 2.11 or something like that coming ahead in the years. So we wanted a 3% cap. That took care of increasing expenses without just letting things just go crazy and just run. Well, in 2021, when we tried to run that legislation, they rejected the idea. The other side, the more, I would say, the folks with a philosophical difference than us, had an idea that that was taking too much money, I believe, away from the bureaucracies and from the government. So they moved that to 20%, that your taxes could only go up to the limit of 20%. And even 20% was too restrictive, and they killed it. Okay, well, you move to 2024 now coming up. We're working on a third year later. Now, evidently, they figured out enough pressure, I believe, from you as the taxpayers and from legislators that have been keeping an eye on the pressure on them. Suddenly, they couldn't deal with a 20% increase. Now they're down at a 5%, promoting a 5% increase. But now bear this in mind, a 5% consistent increase in your property taxes will double your property taxes every 14 years. Even if we held it at 5%. So just stop and think of what people are dealing with right now. With some folks, it's as high as 40, 50, 60%. I've heard in other counties in the other part of the state up to 70% increase in their property taxes year upon year. That is, people can't handle that. And it's because of the way that we figure our property. So we tried acquisition, and I told you guys about that. Looking at how we changed the evaluation of our property. You are charged based on what you paid for your property, instead of what a neighbor is willing to give for their property. And that, we did a study, and that was basically shot down. We got that study through, but there are legislators that are going to be bringing that piece of legislation personally. It didn't come out of revenue, but they are going to be bringing that acquisition study ability back this year. So we'll support that. But there's ways that we can navigate this. But the question is, do we support things like this? What are you guys' feeling on this? Do you want a cap and keep it down there like that and start with that and then go to acquisition? Because I don't know that right there is not a political move. Do we try to save it, salvage it, knowing that we've brought them from 20% down to 5%, and now they're willing to maybe vote for a 5% cap when they weren't willing 3 years ago to vote for a 20% cap? I would say we're making some major progress.
What are the strings?
Well, the strings are the fact that it's just around your house and that your land is not going to be affected by it. Now we've got other folks that are bringing a bill that is going to allow the land to be associated in that cap of 5%. So that's what we're working with. So number one thing, and that's what we need to hear from you guys. Property taxes is one. and figuring out how to get this under control. Mining the wealth out of this audience. What are your suggestions of what we need to do about our property tax situation? Not that we're going to here to tell you what we should do. We need to know what you guys have for ideas and suggestions on what should be done and how you'd like to see it approached. And I will tell you this, I'm willing to listen to you on spending cut and all of that, because that has to be a part of this equation.
Chip, are you, is the legislature more going to sponsor having another study for the acquisition? Because it wasn't not the study that was the error. I mean, that everybody was having a fit about. So is it, I guess that's what I'm asking, because here's one more study.
No, I don't foresee any more studies. We studied it, they brought the information back, but the problem with the study when they did it, I don't need that microphone, it makes it sound even worse when I can't speak plain English. When they did the study, they didn't talk to the people that are paying the bills. They talked to the departments that are going to be affected by the reduction in the amount of money coming in. They don't want it because they see it as a major decline in their ability to continue to operate at the way they are right now. So that was the fallacy in the study. We got the study done. It's doable, but if you listen to the departments that are funded by it, not doable. But they never talk to anybody that's paying the taxes. Zero. Those contractors that were given the responsibility to do the study, they just cut them to pieces in the meeting because they didn't go and do their due diligence, I don't believe, when I watched that, to actually talk to the people like this room. How do you feel about not being charged an unrealized income, an unrealized tax on unrealized income? Most people in here will say, well, I would like to not be charged for money I didn't take in. Well, they didn't talk to you guys, so that was the problem in that. So that's why there's a personal bill being brought to bring this and have that discussion. So it's going to take support from you folks out here in the grassroots to say, no, we want to pursue this. And fair market value was voted in as a constitutional measure in 1983. 85, 83. Was it 88? Was it after that? Yeah.
I don't remember that, but one thing too, I mean, our Constitution used to say it took a vote of the people to raise taxes. And that was changed too. And I would have to look that up as to when, but someone brought that up in Upton, and it used to be that way. It didn't used to be the legislature could just raise your taxes. So just for a point of clarification.
A couple of questions. I was reading some articles where a lawsuit was filed and taken to the Supreme Court of the United States on unrealized income. And they have taken this case. And if that goes through, it's going to impact our state, it's going to impact every state.
And it needs to happen.
It's going to end.
Was that Joe Kennedy that's bringing that? Because I saw
I'm
his
not sure who
testimony.
did it. There was a name in there. There was a personal lawsuit because he was taxed.
Yep.
Illegally. Is there anything in Wyoming that we can do to bring such a law into order or pass that we can block this unrealized income tax that we have to pay?
The only thing I can tell, that's okay. It's far. My wife's here for this one. She can give me the look. But, and if she's not here, she already takes care of it. But this was a constitutional change that took us to fair market value. Now, whether or not if they find in the Constitution that fair market value and that taxing people on unrealized income is unconstitutional, that's a wealth tax, is what that is, then that could challenge our Constitution and create a situation where we have to come up with something else because it's simply not constitutional. Now, there you can also get into, bring Danny Val into this, is what about states' rights versus you know, the federal government telling us how and what we should be or not be able to do. Now, you can stand on the fact that the state of Wyoming voted and they wanted to be charged this way. Well, at that time, we had no idea the long-term ramifications of that, evidently. I don't remember voting for that. But now that's changed, and we need to realize that because we've been directly affected by it because of how stupid other states have been, and their people are voting with their vehicles and they're leaving, and they're coming here, which drives the value of our land up, which we never anticipated that. And so we see this huge windfall coming into the coffers for last year. $1.4 billion was put away. Now, from what Cheri's saying, we're looking at another windfall or in excess of our budget of $744 million. And so, only thing I can think of, Tom, is we're going to have to, if this comes to that, we need to do a constitutional amendment. And that's what we're wanting to do with acquisition potentially, is to change how we evaluate or how we value our property. But there's a lot of people out there that are very, very scared that it's going to take too much money. But the numbers and the data, when you talk to these folks that are doing the hard work right now in the economists, they're saying that it's not. Because as values increase and we go along, people that are buying new homes and paying that higher value will pay that excess because they're willing to pay that. You know, it makes you a better negotiator. If you don't want to pay a lot of taxes, then don't pay a whole ton of money for that piece of property. Well, if you really are willing and you can afford it, then that's fine. But the argument is, please don't drag my taxes up with yours because I can't afford to pay what you can't. So please don't take money from me that I can't manage. And that's where we get kind of the unequitable part. We'll charge you all the same equally, but it's not really equal.
The argument is that the 16th Amendment does not allow taxing on unrealized gains. And that's what the argument is.
So the 16th Amendment is what
correct.
Okay. Well, honestly, if this is not being taxed on unrealized gain, here, let me ask you a question. This was a challenge that was made to me by another legislator. Aren't you thankful that your land's worth more? Why not? Look how you can leverage it. Look how you can borrow more money on less of your property.
I don't want to sell.
So how do you answer that question? Because they think that they're doing all of you a service by watching the land increase in value. It's helping you. But when you talk to people like you guys, it's not, unless you're willing to sell. And here's the other issue. Where am I going to buy land cheaper? I sell my property. Where am I going to go find something cheaper that's a decent place to live? Now I can go, and I mean, that's the other issue. Okay, and what's my argument to that legislator? That old lady should be thankful that her house is worth $500,000 now. She can't pay the property taxes on it, so we're going to push her out of her home into state assisted living, where we're going to have to tax all of you all for her to be able to stay in that assisted living. Because that's money that we're going to have to tax, or take it from somewhere to pay for that. So is it better to help her stay in her home if she's willing and wanting to stay there to make it so that she can live? Or is it better for her to sell her home, which was presented to me, and make sure that that home's bought by a young couple that's going to produce something in the state?
If they can afford it.
Right. So that's the problem we're looking at.
Chip, on this acquisition price, if you buy, and I've seen it, I've been in the contract business for 40 years. People come in here and buy this ranch land and they pay thousands of dollars. And maybe down in the valley where you got irrigation, a piece of land is worth $1,000 in Wyoming. But they come in and pay as high as $2,500, $3,500. And then they list it as ag land and it drops down to what it'll produce. And that's why they're coming here. So if I would go for what you're saying, as long as the guy that buys the ranch for $30 million, that's what that goes on the tax roll for. I don't care if it'll only raise one jackrabbit. He paid $30 million for it. That's what goes on the tax roll.
acquisition.
That's acquisition. See, well, not really, because agriculture is handled very differently, because we take the rolling and 5-year average of the value of wheat, hay, and one other thing. I think it's 3, isn't it? And whatever the market is at that, we have to base that on productive value. But to your point, Danny, I've got folks up in my part of the country right now that are buying these ranches, and they're breaking them up. 35 acres, 40 acres. And that's the issue we face, is they want agricultural land appraised values for 35 or 40 acres of land. Because if I put 2 steers on there, or I lease it to the neighbor, or anything like that, I mean, that the statute is written that way right now. Full disclosure, I'm doing it. I've got a guy that's got 80 acres right next to me right there that I sold him. That was my old pasture land. There was a home and stuff on it there. We sold it. He said, according to the statute, I can, if you will lease this land, he said, I can claim ag evaluation and do that. And everybody's doing it. And that's the thing. How do we, and I told him, I said, I don't want to be involved in this if it's going to be some kind of, you kind of act like you're Aggie, but you're getting the bennies, but you don't really have ag, and then you make it hard on me that is actually, or Allen or Cheri or anybody else that's in agriculture here, because we're all in the same boat together. Here's my question in all that. How do we structure it that the people that are not actually producing their livelihood from agriculture and come out here and buy 25 or 30 acres are actually taxed based on that? Because I don't want to kill me. I can't do it. The production's just not there.
I bought an acre of land, and it had an old cabin on it with a squirrel home, woodchucks underneath, totally worthless. And I got charged $15,000 for a home site. So I went up and tore the home down, and my taxes went down by $120 to the assessed valuation. That's all that cabin was about. The guy next to me's got a bigger place. You go down the road that I can throw a rock to, and they got 5 acres. I'm appraised at $15,000. Go down the road, it's appraised at $9,000. The guy next to me that's got over a $2 million home, his gets appraised at $6,000 an acre. Now something's wrong with that picture, but going back to the ranch, when I went up there, I told him, I said, well, it's not a home site. There's no well, there's no, there is electricity to it, no phone, no nothing. I said, I'll start raising chickens, and it's going to be ag land. And my assessor goes, well, you could do that, but if you sell the eggs, it's commercial. That's what she told me. Okay, I'm fine with that. Then every one of these ranchers that brings, we got a guy out south here in the Rochelle Hills, multi-millionaire lawyer from back east. He bought this ranch. All he does is hunt on it, and he keeps it for his clients to come out and hunt. If you let a hunter pay you $1 for your deer, that is now a commercial entity. It is not ag land. And I had, when Bud Johnson had his cafe in Osage, he closed it down. He is retired. He went in and his taxes stayed the same. And they said, well, it's still a cafe. It's just not being used as a cafe. Well, if that's the case, if you have a bunkhouse on your ag land and I know a lot of people here do it in this state, they feed them a meal, they let them hunt, and that's commercial. And so it's commercial today, and it's commercial for the rest 11 months. It's just not an active commercial, but it's still commercial property. And that's how you get around that. Because these guys from out of state are coming in, paying $30 million for hunting lodges and paying taxes on what the land will produce. And that's where you make up your difference on the acquisition price. But even if you don't do that, Chip, this ain't right. If you're ag, you're ag. If you're selling a product or commercially using that land for a skating ring, snowmobile trail, whatever, it's no longer ag. It's, if you don't charge, it can be ag land. You can give a guy permission to go across your land with a snowmobile or drive across your land to get to a school section, whatever. That's not business. But when you start taking, and the state promoted it, if you let them hunt you get the land tag. That's a big raise. But you understand what I'm saying? You guys are wanting to level the playing field. So you gotta take these guys that are millionaires just buying these places and just letting family and friends and people come out and hunt and pay a little money. That's where you gotta do that. Because they laugh at us. They go, you guys don't pay no taxes. But just because theirs is higher and mine's low, don't mean that mine's low. They go, you guys don't pay any taxes in Wyoming. Well, there's a lot of us in Wyoming that feel we pay plenty of taxes. And that's why they're coming out here to buy the land. It's because they know they don't have to pay taxes on their asset. That's just a revenue stream that you're gonna have to go.
Well, I get it a lot from people in my part of the country because they're very resentful of the fact that they're out there scrimping and saving and digging and trying to be on a ranch and actually get up and fight the cold and all the other elements and everything with it, and they're getting that evaluation, and then somebody comes in and pays an unbelievable amount of money for 40 or 50 or 100 acres, and they get the exact same valuation with no intent to do anything agricultural on it. And so, you know, how do you do that? And that's what we need to know from you guys. How do we approach that without getting lynched?
So
Because
that,
it's going to be a lynching.
yeah, that is because they have to produce $1,000 of ag income. It's part of the production.
I thought it was 500.
Is it 500? I thought maybe we tried to raise it. I thought we raised it to 1,000.
We did.
But yeah, I think so. But my assessor has been an assessor for a long time, and she's the chairman of the ag committee. So we've been having a lot of these discussions with her and picking her brain because Goshen County is the #1 ag producing county in the state. So she's the chairman of the assessor's ag committee. And she said they started out trying to say you have to at least make $20,000 a year from agriculture, and then they lowered it to 10, and they ended up with $1,000 by the time they were done. And so there's a lot of resistance to raising that, but that's a possible solution if we don't get lynched for it.
Oh, it would be a twofer. I would be out of this job, and it would be.
There are solutions. It's just, is it palatable to everybody? Go ahead.
But if I sell eggs, it makes it a commercial profit. Well, that's what I was told. Well, my point is, ag land is commercial land. Even if it takes 1,000 eggs to make it commercial, then it is not ag land anymore, it's commercial. So where do we stop? Is 2 cows not commercial? Then 1,000 cows should be commercial.
See, and that's the problem. Where's the line? See, and that's what Cheri's saying. What happens if it's a dollar amount? You don't qualify, like the assessor was saying, if you don't make at least on your Schedule F, the gross income of such and such. You can't do that on certain lands. But I can tell you this for a fact. I got some people in my country up there. They called me. They said, Chip, they might potentially change that. We won't qualify. We've dropped out on our little place here, 160 acres for 5 years. They said, we haven't taken in that much money to qualify. They're going to throw us up into a completely different tax bracket and going to kill us because of drought. So you got to have to factor in something about a timeline. How long have you had? How long have you got to prove that you can produce that much money and income in ag to be able to qualify? Or else, what she said, if they do that, we're going to have to subdivide this land. So it'll force currently ag land into development potential. So I don't know. It's very good.
I have a question.
Thank you folks for coming.
An unrealized tax, I believe, that's theft. And they're also trying to push that over in DC. The problem goes back to these people that are coming from other states. They purchased their homes, let's say at $14,000, $20,000 40 years ago. Now they sell their homes to come to a better area, like Wyoming, for $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, whatever, and they can afford to just throw away their money over here. And that's unfair to the people of Wyoming.
Well, and I think that's why.
Let me turn this off. Hang on. Go for it.
And that's why I think acquisition is the logical way to be able to bring fairness to that money.
Yeah.
Because whatever you're willing to pay for your property, you make that conscious decision as the buyer, and that you know that you're willing or able to maintain or establish that going forward, what the tax potential implications are going forward. And so that doesn't drag everybody with you. And it's, we talked about Prop 13 and how to try to implement that in Wyoming. And we talked to some folks from California. They said, I've got a family out there that has helped them a ton. But when you start talking about that, you get a lot of pushback from people that want programs. It's like, here's the issue we deal with. I had a gentleman come to me and said, I want more money. Chip, will you please put more money in the water account? I've got projects here. We need about $50 million more to do water projects. Who in this room does not believe that developing water in Wyoming is an important thing to do? I don't see any hands. You guys want more water? If you're doing a wife living like you idiot, the toilet no flush is water not important. It's very important. Yeah. And here was the statement. Chip, I need you to put $50 million in the water account so that we can do projects and withhold more water and develop more lands and things like that. And I said, well, that's a great idea, and I appreciate that because I'm an ag myself. I irrigate. I said, but how do you like your property tax? Oh my God, he said, if you can't get something done about that, you're going to ruin us all.
In addition to the weekly printed version of the newsletter journal, we also promote our community and share important information on our award-winning website, newslj.com, and in our weekly email newsletter, Nuke Now. We also connect with readers through various social media platforms and invite you to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can even take a look at a recent meeting of the City Council, School Board, or County Commission on our YouTube channel. We do hope that you will go to newslj.com and subscribe today, and we look forward to making all of our great content available to you. But regardless of your level of support, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing your part to preserve a free and independent local press.
I said, but how do you like your property tax? Oh my God, he said, if you can't get something done about that, you're going to ruin us all. And I said, then with all due respect, where does the $50 million come from?
Exactly.
If we're not willing to say, okay, I want this money, I want this put in here, I want money for conservation, I want to be able to pay $1,000 an acre to this ranch to not develop their land, buy their conservation rights on the large funding projects. Where's the money going to come from? And you come to me and you say, my taxes are ridiculous, get a hold of it or I'll replace you. But by the way, bring home the bacon. Well, the bacon's coming out of your pig. I'm going to have to kill your hog to bring you bacon. And that's the thing. So many people don't realize that we want these things, but where are we going to fund them? If the extractive industry starts to continue to decline, which even our governor now is kind of all in on the Green New Deal, and we're going to have some discussion about that, and Cheri can elaborate on that. We're going to have to find a way of continuing to generate the revenue that we need to pay for the stuff that we created. We've built some pretty big stuff here, and it has to be maintained. Or are people willing to say, you know what? Maybe we need to right-size government. Maybe we've got too many things going on here, and we need to make some hard decisions about what's really important and fund those things and do them well, but keep more money in people's pockets. But I can't put money in accounts to do cool things if everybody then, when I go home, says, get this tax thing under control because I can't afford my property taxes anymore. Well, that property tax, they're thrilled in Cheyenne because as they see our coal surface bonus revenue declining and the attack on what's going on in our extractive industry, they see this as the replacement for that revenue stream, is property taxes. We have less than 600,000 people in this state, mind you. And we pay the 4th or 5th most per child of any state in the union. just on education alone. And our Constitution clearly says that we can't change that without you folks making a conscious decision to vote to change how we do that. Another thing with this thing is the thing that Brent Deanne is doing. So you guys understand and know what this is. That, you know, the petition that's being sent around, it's over here, and I've signed it. But understand this, that's potentially going to reduce by 100 and how many million? Who knows? 100 and how many million? 130 million? 40 million? That will not, because of the way our Constitution is currently crafted, that will not reduce education spending at all. That 100, education is going to have to be made whole because of our Constitution. It will take not a dime from education. That money has to come out of your local distributions, your departments, all of that. None of that will be taken out of education. The only way education will see a haircut is if the legislative stabilization reserve account falls below $500 million. And at that point, the statute kicks in, and they will be a cross-board 30% reduction in the amount of money to backfill education. Until then, 100% of education is going to be funded. So that haircut is going to happen locally to your municipalities and to your counties, to your departments, all of that.
So are there any bills that are going to benefit municipalities? Is there anything new to benefit municipalities?
And Cheri can speak to this. I'll let her talk first. And there are, direct distribution is there, and that comes to the municipality. And it can go up or down. We have to vote whether or not to even do it. That's not a right. That's a whether or not we've got the money.
Right, that was just it's sharing of the excess revenues with the cities and counties, so that's nothing guaranteed, and I think the governor's rec this year is 110 million, so that'd be 52, or whatever that is, 55 per year, and that's pretty close to what we normally do. It was usually 100, and then we bumped it up to 120 because we had extra, and then now it's back down to 110 is the governor's rec. But the last time we tried to do this, we tried to backfill so that the cities and counties wouldn't be so adversely impacted. Because when you're talking about this 50% reduction, especially the hardship counties are going to be hit really hard. And that is us on this side of the state. And so, you know, the county commissioners, I'm sure all the people who are current county commissioners and those from the past will tell you it's pretty hard to maintain all the roads right now. So if you do a 50% reduction, that might be great for Teton and Park and all of those counties. But as far as Goshen County, our increase was around 24% in some of the outlying areas. It's not been across the board 50% increase. So then you're taking out of basically the purpose of what a government has to operate on for a year, and actually you're probably giving people refunds if you go 50%. So that's a lot. And the 50% equates, I know in Goshen County, I haven't heard from this county, we're meeting with your commissioners and elected officials on the 16th at 1 o'clock. And that's a public meeting, correct? So if anyone wants to be there to hear our discussion, that will be available to you. But in Goshen County, that equates to a 15% decrease across the board in property tax. And so, yeah, the maximum. And that's a lot. And so, and then my question is, and I don't have the answer, if somebody does, please tell me. But if the new class of residential property is passed and the 50% is passed, how do those two things interact? I mean, that's some of the issues that I see with all of this, is that we're trying to get something done, so we're doing so many things that it's extremely confusing as to how they'll interact with one another. And honestly, the fourth class of property, I think that could end up being something that they can increase as well as decrease. So I don't know that that is going to be what everybody thinks it will do. That is why there were two reasons I didn't support that being one of them. And then also, the way we did it, it wasn't the right process because it totally changed the bill. And that's, I mean, you can't just, through an amendment, completely change how a bill functions and then approve that on concurrence. That's not the right process because no one has proper time to vet that. And so I could not support that in good conscience for those reasons.
Yeah, Chip alluded to it as far as our fine governor and his Green New Deal. Is the legislature going to do anything about that? And just a response to that guy who said sell the old woman's house to a young person, how are they going to afford it when the interest rate is so high? They can't afford to buy that $500,000 home anyway. So yeah, these people are talking and blowing smoke. But I really would like to know, are you going to address Gordon's Green New Deal stuff?
Yes, we are. So there's a few things going on. I know there will be some energy bills, and I'm actually heading to UW tomorrow morning at 8:30 to talk to the School of Energy Resources and the two chairmen of the Minerals Committee about some energy portfolio bills that we are going to work on. I hope I can get their support. The other thing that we have planned is the CO2 Coalition, who are the people that were coming for the debate that we had an acceptance on from the governor, and then he so graciously declined. And so several of us sent a letter, as you know, all three of us signed on to that here at this table, to have an honest discussion about the facts about climate change and the effects on the state of Wyoming and our energy industry. Because that was declined, we have invited the CO2 Coalition to come to the state of Wyoming. They'll be lecturing at UW on the 14th at the School of Energy Resources. They'll be touring the coal mine, Arch Coal and Dry Fork Station in Gillette on the 12th, and going to the Gillette Community College there. These will all be public meetings, and on the 13th they'll spend some time in Cheyenne in the evening visiting with us at a reception there, and so those gentlemen are coming. We're really excited to host them. The executive director, Greg Wrightstone, is coming, as well as Patrick Moore, the co-founder of Greenpeace, who has changed his mind, and a couple of others. So they will be coming to Wyoming to visit with the citizens and have town halls and in those two locations, and visit about energy policy in the state of Wyoming, because although the governor has refused to debate, we believe that the citizens need to have a voice in this discussion, and we're doing everything we can to make sure they have one. The other part about all of this is it is the job of the legislature to set policy. And so we have not taken a position to set a policy for carbon negative or net zero. We have not adopted that. The closest thing that has been done was House Bill 200, I think it was in 2019 or 18, which was the low carbon emission standards, and that narrowly passed. I think if anyone would have known the rate increases and things that might be associated with it, it would not have passed, but it did. And it was what we were told at the time, and I didn't vote for it. We were told that it was designed to make sure that carbon capture and sequestration was utilized for enhanced oil recovery, and that we weren't just putting up more wind farms. But that hasn't seemed to be the case. The other thing that we really need to be mindful of is all of the federal money coming in for solar and wind projects. Those solar and wind projects should not put an undue burden on all of the folks around them that are having to deal with industrial siting council. It's hard on county commissioners because they're ill-equipped to go over an application and find out if it's deficient efficient or if it's going to work for the county. There's road impact funding, there's all of the things associated with that, not to mention what, you know, the toxicity of solar panels when they break from hailstorms. There's so much to all of this, but the federal money pouring in. And then some of, you know, we're wondering who is behind some of these companies. Who are they? Are they foreign? Are they domestic? Are they actual people? Who are they? And so there's some other concerns about that. But I would like to see the governor, you know, come to the table and have a policy discussion with the legislature instead of other entities across the country, and really put some good policy that the citizens of the state of Wyoming support, and the support of coal, oil, and gas. And if you listen to Alex Epstein, who came and lectured at UW, you'll know that we need more fossil fuels, not less. And there is also evidence that we need more CO2, not less. In fact, it has a greening effect. It's plant food. All of us know it. I don't know why this is a mystical thing. And the other part about this is some things are not for sale. And so just because all this federal money is being dumped on us, there are some things, our way of life, our, you know, the amount of land that it would even take to even try to come close to what our coal-fired power plants produce is astronomical, and it's just, it'll be a blight that we'll never get rid of. Not to mention the fact that it's unaffordable, it's unreliable, and it's dirty energy. When you produce these batteries in China from slave labor in the Congo, the batteries, you've seen the orange children. I mean, why would we do that? Why would we say that's green energy? It's ridiculous. So, and if anybody's driven past our coal mines in Gillette, I don't know how much cleaner you can get than that. We're doing it right in Wyoming, and people should be following our example. We should not be bowing to them. So, I'm sorry, I got my soapbox. Chip can tell me to shut up.
I'm not going to talk.
Question of the MAC that Harriet's talking about. You doing anything about that?
That's the NAC, that's Natural, can't remember what it was. It's natural, it has to do with our natural resources. Now, it's natural asset companies is what it is. And what it is it's all of our natural assets are being marketed, they're wanting to market them as commodities. And so these natural asset companies can come in, and a lot of them are foreign countries, huge mega corporations, and they can buy our natural assets. And so that is going to be an effect on all of us, because they can control what we're doing in our place, because we're all of a sudden we're polluting their air, or we're using their air, we're doing some of these natural assets that have historically been part of our private property, but now they're putting them up on the free market. And so if you get Harriet Hayman's email, she's got a site to go to get it. If you don't have it, let me know. I can send you an email or forward you to Harriet's. It's something that we do need to be commenting on. And I think we were talking about this after our meeting up in Upton today. I think this is something that we as legislators need to get a bill saying that we're not going to allow that to happen in Wyoming. I mean, it may be hard for us to do that because we have such a high percentage of federal lands in Wyoming, but I think that's something that we as Wyoming should say, okay, we're going to use our 10th Amendment right. This is something that's not enumerated in our national constitution. This is something that we're going to deal with. We're not going to take our natural assets.
Can we touch a little bit on what is the state of Wyoming doing to protect us from migration, the southern border, the northern border? How are we able to Seattle or San Francisco or anything else. And how many are here?
Oh.
I will take a stab at this. I don't know what we are doing as a state. I do know I talked to Scott Smith, the other representative from down in Weston County. He said he was up in Casper, and a friend of his up there took him around and showed him all the homeless people downtown Casper. Basically, he said it's not safe to go to their public library anymore. You don't want to let your wife or kids go downtown Casper anymore. It's not safe. And it's because of all the illegal people that are in Casper right now. And I do know, at least the rumor was when we were in session last year, 1 or 2 busloads of illegals was shipped out to Gillette. But, I mean, and as far as the state doing anything about it, I have not seen us doing anything at all that I know of.
Well, there's some crime increase in Cheyenne as well, and we actually have some homeless people around the Weston County Library too, where they all come from. I don't know, I haven't had the time to try to figure that out, because it's odd to me that they're arriving in Wyoming in winter. I mean, I just don't think this would be the direction I would go. But someone that met a couple of ladies that was trying to make some money from them in Gillette said they were obviously had a Middle Eastern accent, and they said, well, we need some money, and they said, where are you from? And they said, we're from here. And they said, oh, I have never seen you here before, where do you live? And they said, well, right over there. And they said, the low-income apartments? No, just on the street. Well, why are you living on the street? Well, that's where the bus dropped us off. Well, why did the bus come here? Well, or why did you come here? Well, that's where the bus was going. So where they come from, no one really knows. And when the police mentioned the police came up, then they left. So nobody. There's a lot going on as far as different folks showing up in our communities. It ended up being kind of a joke last year, but we had a border wall bill to help fund the border wall, and then also some funding to ship the folks back out of our state. And people made a joke out of that last year, but we were pretty serious about that because we knew the work was coming. But a lot of the people on the Senate floor made a joke of it, and it's not a joke. And there is a national security risk between that and a lot of other things that are happening. There are a lot of fighting age males coming into our country. Make of that what you will. I know what I think about that, and I know what our family is doing to be aware and to be prepared. And I don't know what else to say than that. We have a Department of Homeland Security. We have, I don't know, that last I checked, I think there were 22 employees or something like that were put in the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11. And, I know that they actually may need a little bit more help with some of the threats that we're being faced with right now. And that's just the truth of the matter. So, unfortunately, our federal government's not protecting us. They're doing other things that aren't contemplated in the Constitution, but they're not providing for the national defense. So, we have an election coming up. We're very busy.
So what I hear is you're doing nothing.
Sit down, though. My turn.
I don't know what we can do. What do you propose? We try. We have to have money to do that and a mandate to do it.
You're made more money supporting here on welfare than you are for exporting to Chicago.
Right.
Or New York.
To a sanctuary city that wants it.
I will say, Tom, that when we were dealing with that, and that was an issue that came up, is I talked to my local sheriff, and he said, and I actually had a call saying that there was going to be a busload of them delivered into Pine Haven. They were on their way. And I called my sheriff's department, and I called the mayor of Pine Haven. I said, do you know that this is, potentially could happen? And they said, we will not allow them off the bus. And the sheriff said, I will block and run them right on out into South Dakota. So it's a situation where we have to have local involvement in this. You're not required to keep them. And that's the other issue. I talked to the governor when this was first onset. This was over a year or so ago. He said, I am not encouraging and I am not receiving any illegal aliens into this state. I am not creating asylum. I am not doing all. He reassured me at that time that that is not happening here. And then it was after that we heard that there was a busload of Guatemalans that were dropped off at the airport in Gillette late in one evening. One of the legislators talked about it. Well, then we heard later that they reloaded them when word got out that they were there, and they disappeared. Put on the bus and left. So to say, what we can do, first of all, you got to catch them. First of all, you got to have some kind of a policy in place that would say, if we find you and you're illegal, which we already do. I mean, those policies are there. If you're here without papers, you've got to go. So I don't know what else we would do other than the fact that hopefully our legislators and our governor and our leadership and our law enforcement would support the state in the fact that this is not a sanctuary state, that we do not have a sanctuary city in Wyoming, to my knowledge. So all we can really do is just make sure that people know that if you don't come here legally, you're not welcome here. And that's the thing.
If they come here illegally, you can arrest them.
Right now they can.
They can.
You can.
They can.
They can, because you're an illegal alien. You can't be here without a visa. You can't be here without papers. So you get extradited back to your country of origin or out of here. So that's the thing where we have to just stand on the laws we have at this point. And I pray to God that Donald J. Trump gets reelected. And I know that's not even a great thing to say, but I don't see any other answer with that. I really don't. Somebody that's actually going to stand up and do what he says he was going to do, and that's close that border. Yeah.
All these guys that wants to raise the taxes down there in Cheyenne, has any of them really done any investigation as to how bad we really need our taxes raised? I mean, I worked for the Department of Corrections up here for over 20 years. We were spending twice what the national average was per inmate. And I'm just saying, I think that's the kind of stuff that really needs to be investigated. Your DOT, DOC, whatever, it don't matter. Just throwing it out there.
See, and those are the things we need to know, Dan, because those are the discussions you don't hear.
Yeah.
But that's the same discussion we have with education. In Wyoming, we spend, I think, the fourth most of all the states in the United States per child. I think we're only behind, who is it? Massachusetts, New York, or something like that. And we have a smaller population in any state in the union. Across the board, we spend more money. We out eclipse everybody around us. But our performance is less than stellar. So why not?
Don't take the director's words for this thing. You
Right.
got to look at it yourself,
Well, and that's the thing too, that comes with change of leadership. You've got to have people that are willing to say, well, wait a minute, now let's audit this. Let's look at this. Why are we only getting this much for what we're spending? And there's very little bit of that that's asked. And so, but I think it's getting better. I feel hopeful that it's improving.
And something else all of us either know or know of, Taylor Haynes, and I love what he said one time was, don't send our taxes in. Keep them here, give them back to the people, see what happens.
Dan.
Chip, Mark, I agree with me and you've had this discussion, and I think I agree with you. Wyoming does not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem.
Yeah.
And the military is taught on a 5th grade level, used to be. I think with the people that's in there now, it's probably down to a 3rd or 4th grade level, maybe even 2nd grade level. So, but even there's only one NCO or one man in charge of every 7. If you've got 7 privates, you have to have a corporal. If you've got 7 corporals, you need a buck sergeant. So on up the ladder. Wyoming, and even as bad as some of the younger people we may think are, they're still the cream of the nation as far as I can see. So why does a state that's got the best people in the country, most self-sufficient, most self-educated, self-motivated, need as many people? What is it? 1 out of 3 for every 3 citizens we've got a government employees in this state? It's something like that.
We have 852 publicly paid employees for every 10,000 residents. Highest in the union.
So we need to cut that down, and you guys are taking heat, and I don't want to lose any of you. You tell these people that keep coming to you crying, well, I want this, I need this, well then you get in the books and find out if you want to get by with 1 less game warden. You bring me the money and we'll put it in that fund. You need to, and that will get these people educated, is what we all want in this room. You look at the population of Weston County. Chip, you've been coming for at least 4 years here. And I'll bet you've seen the same faces here 9 times out of 10 you've been here.
And I love to see all of them.
I understand that. But there's a guy that's got a podcast on the internet, and he goes by the name Genghis Khan, okay? And he made a statement that will prove to you, Cheri, our county chairman, is putting out enough information. Anybody in this county wants to know, you can find it. It's on our county website, blah, blah, blah. But he said there's only 2 things, and I disagree with him, there's 3. He said there's only 2 things that'll make America wake up. He said, the first one is take away our guns. Because as long as Americans got their gun, that's their blanket. I got my gun, I am free. Okay? The second is blood in the streets. If there's mass killing in the street, people will get up and do something. I say the third one is, if they go to their $1,000 cell phone and look up their 401k one morning and it goes 0000000, they will get off the couch and do something. So those are the things you have to promote to get, because we've done it. We've worked as a county as hard as we can. And a lot of it is, they don't have time. But I say cut revenue. We're not short of revenue. We have to rearrange it.
I know this, when you reduce taxes on production increases.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the reality.
Yep.
Always.
I mean, that's just a common sense fact. And then you get more revenue. You know, I mean, but that's the fear. You know, and I think Mayor Mike Mills said something, I wrote it down. What did he say? He said, when we were over there, where is this? Oh, tax-paying communities treat them as an investment instead of an expense. Infrastructure, things like that, you know. And that's the way most of the perception is that you're just an expense out there. Well, we're missing the boat on some of that.
Freeloaders.
Yeah, we're freeloaders. Yes, sir.
I just quick question. We were talking about illegal immigrants. I stopped at the border and done my paperwork, and I got my court date in 8 years. Does that make me legal?
Yeah, what?
I'm an illegal immigrant. I crossed the border, I signed the paperwork, they give me my slip of paper.
This is a hypothetical, right?
Okay.
Now you got it. I'm like, this is a revelation I have not gotten. David, go ahead.
So now I got a court date in 8 years, so that makes me legal.
Court date in 8 years?
That's what they're giving out there, 8 to 10 years. Court dates.
It's as high as 29 years.
Serious.
Serious? That's serious. In Texas, it's as high as 21 years.
You gonna vote?
If they give me the right to vote. I know I'm willing to give me a right to vote.
Maybe
He's also gonna give me free health care. I've got my phone. He's giving me free money.
We'll pay for your children's education.
Yeah,
And healthcare.
you're going to.
And healthcare.
I was wondering why you look so different.
But my question is, we talk about, okay, they can't stay here.
If they're truly an illegal alien and they're here without papers and they're just coming in and stuck under the border.
Okay, half the bus is full of that, half the bus got papers, they've got a court date in a year.
Legislatively, what can you do?
What can you do? You can't deport them.
I don't think you
The
can.
way it is.
Yeah, if it's like saying if I'm waiting for a court date on a speeding ticket and it comes up with such, well, unless it said you can't drive, well, my court date's coming up, but this is my first offense. So I'm gonna get to drive and go on about with my rights and my privileges until my court date shows up. I don't, honest to God, know.
Because actually, it's saying I'm getting my citizenship or applying for my citizenship in 8 years.
For 20.
If we're not a sanctuary state, though, can we send them to another state? And they can wait their 20 years out there.
Well, that's what Texas has been doing. Governor Abbott's been doing it.
Last year, that was the point of that bill that everybody made fun of last year. I mean, that's the whole point. And so maybe I don't know if it's gonna be rerun, but.
I think that one needs to.
When you have Catholic charities and all these that are behind them. and
What's
there's
that?
Catholic charities, they're behind with the cartels, pushing them in, and so they're hiding behind them. Have you not heard that?
See, I've heard that there was a motel. You know, I mean, you believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. That's what you're supposed to do. Okay, I was told that there was a motel or a very large hotel in Sheridan, Wyoming that had been fully rented by the U.S. government just to house transitioning people coming into the country. Rented the entire facility. Took it out of the market. That was just a place for them to lay over while they moved on and went to other locations. So they're taking that money and they're like, hey, I'll just rent you my whole facility for a certain amount of money. How do you tell them that? You know, you can't do with your business much as yours. It's like zoning or anything else. You know, you can't do what you want with your property. So I mean, it's a very, very sticky situation. But I mean, if you're here illegally, which evidently according to what you just described, you really would not be, because you're coming here to try to be a citizen, go through the steps, and they push you out 2 decades. I just think with that, there have got to be some real limitations on what your rights are, beyond the fact that you have the right to be protected under this country. You don't have the right to vote. You don't have the right to be able to own a gun. You don't have those are rights that are reserved for citizens of the United States. If you're in the process of becoming a citizen, and you know that the Democratic Party or that administration that is very, very liberal and left is trying to import as many of you as you can, swings you in here and you start to smell it, or we start to see pressure to say, let them vote while they're here, while they're waiting to become American. They want to be a citizen. Let them vote. Then we have to, as legislators, say, no. There are certain rights that are reserved to citizens that are here legally. And I don't know what else you can do. I mean, I'm open to any ideas you might have, because that's I've never heard that and been presented with that idea. I don't know what you do.
Colorado passed a law to allow illegal aliens to vote.
I have one question that's kind of sort of a subject change, and maybe the last question of the evening.
Yeah, we're getting close to 7.
Are we doing
My tummy's
anything at
growling.
all to have our Attorney General directly elected instead of appointed by the governor?
There is support without question from the conservatives to have an elected Attorney General. But there is major pressure from the other side that we don't have enough votes to overwhelm to say no, that needs to be appointed by the governor. And see, the only time this comes up, Mike, is if you got a governor that you want to take out and spank. I mean, that's just well. I mean, and if you don't want to spank the man and you think he deserves a prize and you want to put your arms around his neck and hug him, then so be it. That's fine. That's your right. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm just
But
saying
shouldn't
that
we
that's
do
what the
that
current
when we
catalyst
have a
comes.
good governor, which I
Huh?
haven't seen in 20 years, but don't we still have the right, we're the only state that I know of in the country that does not directly elect the state attorney general.
I fully support legislation to allow us to elect our attorney general, without question. And there are many in the legislature that would absolutely categorically agree with that. And I think with a few more conservatives coming in, I mean, if you're gonna represent us and you're gonna fight for the laws that we pass, then we would hope that you would reflect those views and those values. I mean.
Okay, assuming we had the votes, what's the procedure to do that?
It would probably be just like another top 5 elected.
Yeah.
You'd have 6.
You just pass a law saying this
Yes.
person is
Yeah,
now
Elected
elected.
position would probably be a constitutional change, would have to be, wouldn't it?
I don't know, we'd have to.
Or top 5 elected
We've
constitutional
had
positions, I
several,
think.
yeah, we have. We've had several bills on it, so you might just look up some of the past bills. I don't know who's gonna be running that or if anyone is. The thing is, and the thing everybody's gotta be aware of is this is a budget session, so it's a short session.
Requires a 2/3 introduction vote. to be
2/3
able to consider.
introduction to even go to committee, so that's a lot. And then the budgets, you know, there's a lot of excess money, there's a lot of excess spending, just even in the governor's recommendation. The Joint Appropriations Committee is marking up the budget as we speak, and so they're in for the next 2 weeks working on the budget. So when that all comes out, I mean, that will be a lot to digest. It's a lot of work, obviously, the budget, even in the last, session, we had a big supplemental budget. So there will be a lot of work to do, and I think the budget needs to take center stage too, because those are important policy decisions, how we spend our money. So anyway, Marty's had her hand up a couple of different times.
And it's not cramping, so it's okay. Thank you. On a happier note, sort of. So you know that Newcastle's gonna have their RMP. And you see, and I heard a little bit about the FNRPA account perhaps getting some more money. My question is there serious consideration, and I know, sorry, Danny, I don't know how to fund this, but we have to go this way, okay. A natural resource lawyer, because part of the problem is when we fought the prairie dogs on the Thunder Basin, the NGOs are allowed to have the Equal Access to Justice Act, which allows them to be repaid for all their legal fees up to $750 an hour. When you have counties like Weston who are lucky to find $10,000 to do something like that, we don't have the money for that. So in order to, you gotta fight fire with fire, and you gotta push back on those NGOs. And so when I heard that, I was quite encouraged. I know it's another position, I get that. But at one point, I know that the state of Wyoming was in 26 lawsuits, but you have to, that's the only way you get that, because the NGO, that forest management plan on where the prairie dogs are in the Thunder Basin is still not signed. It's still in the legal system. It's ridiculous. And so what I'm saying is, I'd really like to see if that's available, that we can do that, somebody that fights all the time. Constantly looks up the Federal Register and has their finger on it all the time. Weston County did hire someone to do that, but we don't have the money to necessarily pay.
See, in that discussion we had, and Harriet mentioned that, she said, I want an attorney general that is just out there fighting, that just wade through hell just to fight a circle saw. I mean, just fighting for this state, fighting for the ability to be able to move our products and our commodities, fighting for our rights as a state to be able to operate. And I think that's what you're saying, and that's what they did. I mean, that's what they put that money together in an effort to try to be able to hire somebody with the teeth and the knowledge and the ability to be able to fight these things. And I think those are good dollars spent. We have to use those dollars to be able to protect ourselves and to be able to keep the state solvent.
They made the Thunder Basin grass and the federal government made up the federal newspaper. There wasn't a piece of grass out there for anything. The only thing that was growing was prickly pear. And the last time I checked, we can't even make tequila out of it. So, I mean, it was ridiculous and sad, but we had to finally go to the governor and say, help. But we're already there.
And what you're saying illustrates the fact that we can't afford not to.
Thank you.
We can't afford not to. And not only that, but, you know, there may be other avenues available to us, which is why we've set aside the $50 million. We know that the RMP is going on up here with the BLM as well. We've got the Rock Springs RMP. There's a lot of federal overreach coming our way, and we understand that. Sometimes having the ability to get outside counsel might be the option that we need to pursue, because those folks are out there in the trenches every day, at least as a stopgap measure until we could find someone that could do that and ascertain how much that would cost us to be housed in the interim. So there's other options out there. We're looking at all of that. We also think that the legislature should be able to pursue things maybe the governor isn't willing to. And so that's why we have set the money aside for it. It's a legislative action, not just the governor.
I appreciate it. Thank you and thanks for letting me.
One last thing. I hope you all three will pass on to Alden just how shattered I am that he didn't sit on
That's a good note to end on.
I will, let me tell you something else though quickly before we end. I learned this the other day because I was at a meeting and I had a person at a meeting sit there and say that, you know what, Wyoming's resources are played out. They're done. You know, that we just need to move on and quit trying to, you know, beat a dead horse or all this much stuff. And full transparency, I didn't know. I had no real resource to say, well, no, this is going on or this is going on, and that's why. And I was at a loss for words, which I know you all realize is pretty hard to do. But I hated to be the person that just answered nuh-uh and not have any real factual foundation of what we have right now. So I called the head of the Wyoming Petroleum Association. I said, what's going on in Wyoming? And why is it? I had a gentleman tell me that Wyoming's done and we need to start looking towards other things. And he says, well, just in brief, he said, the PRB, which is the Powder River Basin, is the most exciting oil play in the world right now. He said there are 12 separate plays in the Powder River Basin alone. We cannot, even at this point, tell how much is down there horizontally or vertically. And he said last year alone in the Powder River Basin, we drilled the highest producing oil well in the history of this state. It was in the Powder River Basin here in Wyoming. He said there are companies coming from all over the world to just try to figure out what all we've got here. He said if anybody will tell you that Wyoming is on its way out, he said that is absolute crap.
Do you know?
And he said, tell everybody that. And it's nice to know, from my perspective as a legislator, to relate to you, we sit on a vast blessing in this state that is security that we have that the world needs. And if we will elect legislators and people that are willing to recognize that value and help those corporations, those companies, those hard-working men and women out there to mine the wealth that we are blessed with in this state, it provides security for us and this nation. So if anybody tells you that Wyoming is played out, they're full of it. We are absolutely on the cusp of enormous development in the state of Wyoming in all of our extractive industries. They can't even measure it. And so, incredible opportunity. So we need to be good stewards of that and be able to make sure that it lasts and we develop it responsibly.
At one time, county was down and it paid all the taxes, so the farmers wouldn't lose their land. The county commissioners voted that we'll just take the revenue off the Osage field until it picks up. That old girl's been there a long time, and during the height of the water flood, we were shipping over 800,000 barrels a day. But the secret to that is, you know, there's still 80%, every bit of oil that was there and still there. We've only taken 20%.
Exactly, and we are developing the technology to be able to go get that. And if there is one thing in all of this that CO2 is useful for, They're using it for, what is that, enhanced oil recovery. And that works. They'll take CO2 and they'll push it into those oil fields, like the Big Muddy and even over here, and they said it'll bring oil out of that ground like you can't even imagine. But the technology is being developed to be able to deal with it. It's corrosive, but unlimited amount of oil in existing fields, like you say, Dan, that is there and available if we utilize the technology and manage it properly. Yes?
I believe the Guernsey terminal is currently 13th largest terminal in the United States. There's over 4 million barrels of storage at that.
Yep. That's awesome.
You may not know the answer to this, and that's okay. The crude quantity in the oil. Do you know if it's a high crude or a low crude? Is it the high crude that Venezuela gives us?
Green and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The quality of it. I don't know. I didn't talk to. Is it sour?
Is it sweet
that
or
I
sour?
don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I was at that county commissioner meeting the other day, $92 a barrel oil right now, and he told us in Cook County, he said they're drilling like crazy right now.
Well, that tells me it's sweet.
On state and
it's sweet crude then.
And private.
Wow.
That's the only thing that he
That's
said is in Wyoming we struggle compared to Texas in the Permian Basin, is that we struggle here because we have so much federal land that they can restrict use of. But on our private and on our state lands, we have resources that we can't even begin to measure right now. So it's encouraging. Yes.
Is there any laws that are on the books that China can come in and buy Wyoming land?
No, we're working on that right now.
I hope so.
China owns land within a mile of your F.E. Warren Air Force Base, and she might even be able to elaborate on some stuff that's happening right over here on the state line in her area with Pine Bluffs and the Nebraska line. But we're working on that right now, in real time, with Homeland Security.
And it's a real problem.
It is. We need to be aware of that.
And unfortunately, that was the bill that we did bring up last session, and it got voted down.
Did you solve the constitutional issue behind it?
Yes.
Did you solve that?
What's that?
Did you solve the constitutional issue behind it? That was the question.
Are you talking about the
very
alien resident provision in the
Said
Constitution?
that any land could be sold to anyone?
Well, it actually says alien residents can own land, but there's a question as to what that definition means. If you go back to old insurance law, an alien resident means somebody that lives in the country from another state, and that's what that means. But if we go in and define that, I think we can take care of that problem.
That'd be the nice way to do it.
We've seen states like Arkansas and Missouri
Yeah, we
already
talked-
doing that work right now.
Yeah, we've been working with the Arkansas Attorney General on the bill.
They're doing it. They're
Thank all of you for coming. Appreciate your input.